Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to my channel. I am giving homage and respect to Richard Simmons, who passed away today, July 13th, one day after his 76th birthday, and a birthday yesterday. So happy earthly birthday and happy heavenly birthday. He turned 76 years old, and I just thought I'd give a respect, honor, and homage to his wonderful and different life, I'd say. I'd say he had a very colorful life, I'll put it that way. So I like that backdrop for him. I might do a little bit of reading reference because I like to make sure that I'm very factual when I'm speaking of someone's passing. As they say in Black culture, he got his wings. But for more information on his life, you of course can do his own Wikipedia, his IMDb. His website is richardsimmons.com. So let's get into it. I do recall how wonderful he was as a promoter, a self-promoter. And I thought that was, to me, his greatest talent because he was self-made. And he was very successful at being self-made. So how did he get there? Let's review how he got there. He was obese as a child, even as young as 4 years old. He felt very uncomfortable and often very teased by children, as children do at that age. When he was in his teens, he had considered being a priest, and he wanted to pray the meanness out of people. He wanted to pray the meanness out of people. And then as years passed, he decided he wanted to do something with his artwork. Um, and he was leaving the New Orleans area in which he was born and traveled on to Los Angeles to pursue that. But in the interim of that, he had managed to gain 268 pounds. Now, he's just about 5'6", so he's a shorter package, I'll say. And that is obviously overweight for that height. So typically, I know a man at 6'2" is about 185. So he was about almost 100 pounds over that and much shorter. But at any rate, he moved to Los Angeles and he got a job at a restaurant called Derek's in Beverly Hills, which is still standing. And he began to observe how the wealthy were all fit and how the wealthy was all chic and how the wealthy was all slim. He began to watch what they would order to eat. And there were almost always a salad involved or as a main dish, and they portioned their meals. And this began to drive a sense of interest in him because of his own battle with weight. Working at Derek's, he began to really focus on this, and he ended up losing 123 pounds. Now, while working at Derek's in Beverly Hills, he began to, and he was very friendly. Of course, his personality. Some people just have that extremely outgoing personality, extrovert. He was that, and his job at Derek's was to be the maitre d', so he was great greeting people as they came. He built up a relationship, and he began to decide that he wanted to get into fitness and start getting clients through the folks that he met at the restaurants, particularly since he had taken his before and after photo of when he had lost his 123 pounds while working at Derek's. So his fitness clientele was basically hand delivered to him as he worked at the restaurant. He opened his first gym in Beverly Hills. Now, as expensive as that is, and for him to do it on his own, he did not come from wealth, but he came from means by which um, his parents were somewhat entertainers in the New Orleans area, but not at the scale that he was beginning to develop and desire. But for him, he knew that Beverly Hills was out of his reach, but he felt that it was only out of his reach until he built his clientele. So he opened his gym there on a small scale. And through one of his clients, he said, you should really record this. And he began recording, and the videos is what took off, as we know. And he became well known for videos, for fitness videos. And his personality just began to shine and shine and shine. And he would motivate everyone to get involved and just get it, because his physique was not the physique by which most of us, even today, look at someone to lead us in our own workout. Most of them are very buffed. You can obviously see the muscles. They are very chiseled. But he looked like just like us. He looked like he was active, but not necessarily the very chiseled, buff trainer look. He looked like us. And that was very inviting to most everyday folks. And so there he was, involved with the videos, leading the videos, motivating us, encouraging us to continue his high impact aerobics, is what he was basically selling. Move, move, move is what he was saying, selling. And so he began to focus his fitness on gyms and clients and weight loss and high energy aerobics led by himself. So he didn't have to pay someone else. And he learned how to set up his videos himself. So he was generating income, all coming back to himself. Namely, his Sweating to the Oldies video sold a lot. He was able to get different versions of Sweating to the Oldies because it was the music that people were really kind of jamming to, the Motown and all of that. Now, at that time, I see that I'm not even really using these notes, but I guess I want to have them just in case. At that time, videos, so see how long ago that was. Videos were the selling, the VHS videos, and you would sit in front of a TV and work out with the leader. Jane Fonda and Suzanne Summers from the TV show Three's Company, they also had videos, and other big names had videos. But there was Richard sandwiched between all of that, holding it down himself. Because with Jane Fonda and Suzanne Summers, they had an established name. They had an established following. They had a production company. Everyone would just raise their hands to work with it. But Richard was self-made. And that to me was his giftedness. That was his caveat. That was his jewel. That was his crown jewel, is that he was his own gimmick, per se. He was his own funny man. He was his own go get him. He was motivational. Everybody felt like they, as he became a celebrity, that they just still knew him. And so that worked to his favor as he began to move into the scene in Hollywood and get invited in closer in Hollywood. He was still able to pull names from those that he met in Beverly Hills. So door openers, the importance of door openers. So as for Richard, he was also at that time, so now he is a name. Now he is a face. And now he is a personality. And now people are calling him, and he is getting it, and he is very popular, and he's very active. He begins to get promo deals, and he begins to get invited. For example, He appeared many times for about 4 years straight on the soap opera that was very hot at the time called General Hospital. He insisted on appearing as himself. So there you go. So his name, promotion. He was excellent at self-promotion. He was also a frequent guest on like game shows like Wheel of Fortune, Family Feud. He was a guest on Ellen's show, Wendy Williams' show, I believe, back in the day, Arsenio Hall's show. But where he had his most frequent appearances on a talk show was with David Letterman and Howard Stern. Now, why that's so important is because while Richard was able to poke fun at himself, because part of his gimmick also was the ability to do comically self-mockery, make himself the butt of the joke. But on the David Letterman and Howard Stern's show, they would treat him poorly and they would make him uncomfortable and they would help him in the self-mockery. Many times he would fall out with the men, but he would come back because he knew. Now, this is before technology. You could self-make yourself at that with that, especially with that much name notoriety. But he would go back to them, although he didn't want to. He would go back to them because they had a broad bandwidth and it was worth their nonsense, I'll say. So that's my word. In order for him to promote his product, his whatever his next video was, it was okay with him to do it. On more than one occasion, he was disrespected, I'd say. So, for example, here's an example. On the David Letterman show, he reached to give David Letterman like a hug, and David Letterman pushed back and sprayed him with the fire extinguisher. The force was so much that Richard had an asthma attack and had to go to the hospital. That did it for him, and he would not go back on the Letterman show for a long time, although David Letterman offered a public apology. He wouldn't go back. When he did go back, years later, I believe like 4 or 5 years later, when he did go back, he went back to promote, I believe it was some type of steam product where he was saying you steam your vegetables and how it can be used. And they were going to demonstrate that. Now, this is his product, but David Letterman took the, I guess, just took the opportunity to handle the product, and he was handling it wrong. And the steam splashed all over, and it splashed at Richard, sending him again to the hospital. So the little things, it's lack of carefulness. On the Howard Stern's radio show, he was often pinned about different things, topics that either politics or gentrification and all of that, in which Richard would say, I'm here to promote my next video. So little things like that that he had to tolerate. And by the way, his sexual identification was never discussed publicly. People could draw a conclusion as to what that was for him, but he never discussed it publicly. And that level of privatization should be respected. Even now, while we seem to embrace the choice of a person, if someone isn't wanting to tell you, that's their choice, what they do in their privacy. So he never came out per se. And once on the Ellen show, I believe, she was almost pushing to help him come out, and he pushed back. And that's his prerogative. So I appreciate that in any person who can stand up for themselves. And many of my talks have been about standing up for yourself, but this is about Richard right now, not my prior talk. So what else is key about him? He did many voiceovers. You pull up his IMDb, you'd be surprised at the many voiceovers he did. He did many voiceovers. He was spokesperson for a lot of different fitness products. He published 12 books. 12 books. He published 12 books, which you can find, I'm sure, on Amazon now, as well as the Sweating to the Oldies. You can also get those in various forms, even today, if you're interested. His main ingredient to all of his sales was that series, Sweating to the Oldies. It came out in every form at the time. So at the time, we had transitioned from cassettes to VHS, and VHS, the CDs were coming, and all of them followed, and they were still selling. Now, isn't that something? They were still selling. Self-made, he wasn't Hollywood, and he really got his product out there, despite being bordered by those who were more well-known than he was. In his final days, now this is the part that for me, I am often curious about the fame, the fame part we don't know, the defaming of the fame. Over the last 4 to 5 years, and I believe TMZ had a report at one time, and it was denied or denounced, but TMZ is mostly always right. But in his final days, Richard Simmons, who never married and never had kids or other family members really around him, if you think about it, you see him out, you hardly ever see personal people around him. You pull up his pictures and you see him out on red carpets and things. You hardly ever see personal people. In his final days, he was secluded, nearly secluded. And on more than one occasion, there was a call for a welfare check at his home. And it was said that he was being held hostage by his 2 housekeepers, whom he lived with for so many years, and that they had basically taken control of the house and of his life, and that they were answering his emails, and that they were doing. Now, he could have been sick and he could have asked them to. But there were some who believe, now who the some are, I don't know, but who believed that there was some nefarious act by these housekeepers. Now, I'm saying that to say this. When he died today, and I'm sure maybe additional reports will come out, I'm sure of that, but they said he died of natural causes. And prior to his passing, a few months ago, there was yet another welfare check on him. There was a public, how do you put it, like a public statement made that he had released. And everyone who did know him or knew him in a way like of a personality type said he didn't write that. That doesn't sound like him. Now I'm sharing that to share this in summary of his life purpose by which he pursued professionally, and he was a great promoter. At the end of a life, especially a famous life, there's been more than one occasion where we've heard such things, where the person was being almost like, I think control is a word, kept away from the public. they seem to have something on them. He's not the first one. I can't think of names right now, but I've heard this before. And I think that is a very sad lot in life, particularly because I've always been a person who kept tight controls of things. I don't want anyone to ever control my life, even in the end of it. So that part breaks my heart. But his entire life was one to be celebrated, and that's what we're doing now. We'll celebrate it in the rich, colorful way that he shared it with us and chose to share it with us. And I would say that may God bless his soul and bless the lives that mourn him now. And that should anything have been nefarious, that dark thing will come to light, as it always does. But at this point, Richard rests in peace. And have a good night. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Good night.